Hello and welcome to my program today, Victorious Souls. Today I have a live interview with Dr. Donna Chacko. She is a woman who has been in the medical community for many years, decades, practiced medicine first in oncology and then in family medicine. And she did that until she wrote her book, Pilgrimage, A Doctor's Healing Journey. And she's a mom. She's a grandmother, a wife, and she has a passion for helping people to tap into abundant health with the foundation in their faith. And so I'm real excited to bring her in here to meet you. And for those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Danielle Burnock from danielleburnock.com. Love yourself from Survive to Thrive, that lady on the internet who loves you. And so welcome my guest today, Dr. Donna Chacko. Welcome, Donna. Thank you for being with us today. I'm so excited for you to share your story.
Very happy to be with you.
Well, you're a doctor, or you're a retired doctor, right?
Yes.
So you were a doctor for many years and even different kinds of doctors. What got you into becoming a doctor in the first place? Why didn't you become a doctor?
Well, I always liked science and I liked people, but I had no idea about being a doctor. I mean, in those days, it was uncommon and it never entered my mind until one day when I was a senior in high school, an out-of-town guest asked me what I was going to be. And I said, I don't know. And I said, but I like people and I like science. And she said, well, why don't you be a doctor? And I go, wow, that's what I'm going to be. And it was like, had never entered my mind before that. I didn't know had never seen probably a female doctor. So.
Wow. So this gentleman asks you this question and suggests that he changed the whole trajectory of your life.
I never thought about it like that, but yes, I wonder if I would have figured it out because it wasn't very common. I think there were 7% of women, maybe a little bit more than that in our medical school class.
Wow. Yeah. Well, congratulations on becoming a doctor when it was not the norm.
I'm glad I did it. Medicine is a wonderful, wonderful profession. It's challenging, but it is.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of schooling you have to go to for that. There's a lot you have to learn. I know it takes a lot to be a doctor. I couldn't be one.
Well, I was honored to be part of that profession and in spite of the challenges along the way.
Well, you were also married and raising a family at that time. How did all of that go together, raising a family and being married and being a doctor? And tell us all about that part of your time of your life.
Well, I married young and quickly, and that's a part of the equation that we have to remember. So I was married before I started medical school.
Oh, wow.
And then as my career proceeded, we had 3 children. My husband was from India, and we moved a couple years in training before we were eventually settled. And it was just very, very busy, too busy. I loved my profession and I mean, I was so grateful to have it. I was a radiation oncologist for 20 years and then I did another residency and changed specialties, but raising the children, I was a radiation oncologist. So I mean, I worked full time, but I didn't have like that many nights or weekends. But I just remember those years kind of as a whirlwind. And I didn't ever take time for myself or for lady friends or anything because I really felt like, oh my goodness, I'm gone all day. And then how do you go out and do something for yourself, And I was too busy. I let my faith drop. I had been raised as a Catholic and went to Catholic schools, in fact, through high school. And I didn't decide I didn't want to be a Catholic. I just got too busy. It just dropped off the list,
Yeah.
Then the thing about those years, I was not introspective at all. I didn't really understand what was driving me or what was going on. I just know that increasingly I was not happy. I was not happy in the marriage in particular. And maybe I used my work as an escape. It certainly gave me a sense of comfort and meaning that I didn't have always in my marriage.
You're
And of
certainly
course,
not the only one who's done that.
right. And, trying to keep up with 3 daughters and all their activities and all. And I look back and I have, many, many regrets about those years because as our marriage got more and more problematic, I just, I don't know, we couldn't fix anything. We didn't solve our problems. We just kind of got in these stuck patterns of
Mm,
poor communication. And it's probably relevant to say here, one of the reasons we have those unhealthy patterns is because from day one, I didn't always speak up,
mm,
including the fact that I got engaged 6 weeks after I met this man. And part of me knew that I wanted to wait longer, but I just couldn't say, oh, honey, I really love you, I think, but let's just wait a little longer.
mm.
I just couldn't. It was like it would cause a perturbation in the waves. I just kind of went along, I guess, or the confrontation, or I don't know. But that's a very major example of me doing that. But I did that about many things
Mhm.
in our relationship, and it builds up. It builds
Yeah.
up, and pretty soon you don't even know, but you have this big wad of resentment inside.
Mhm.
So, we had a whole bunch of issues that we then could not communicate about. And so our marriage just got worse and worse. And he could be tough, he was a strong vocal guy. And I, I didn't fully understand, I don't think at the time, the lines that he was crossing. But we just kept on trying. I just kept on trying. But you recognize we were also pretty isolated because I had moved from a different part of the country from my family, and he was from India, so his family was not around.
Mm.
And then you're just too busy to cultivate close relationships. So it was just kind of a recipe for disaster, really.
Yeah. Well, you
And
said that you were far from your family. Were you close with your family before you got married?
yes, we were. I have 2 brothers, and my parents were really good parents. They were old school though. We didn't talk about anything. We didn't talk about anything. Feelings,
So
sex,
you never
love,
spoke up
decision.
as a child either.
No, we
So you
just,
had built those patterns as a child, so that just played out in your adult life.
yeah. And the other pattern that has a lot of advantages, but it was hyper developed, was this working thing.
Mhm.
My parents and my
I'm
grandparents were,
recognizing some things here from my
yes,
life.
right. They were post-depression era, and my brothers and I, all of us, we learned to work hard, and to the so that it can be uncomfortable if you feel like you're not worthy, or
Mhm.
if you're not being productive or doing something all the time. In spite of how far I have come, I still have to really work at that. It shouldn't be hard to relax, but sometimes it's hard to relax. And anyways,
I understand. There's a book that was written years and years and years ago. One of the books that, because at the beginning of my healing journey, I read lots of books if I could find them. And one of them is something to the effect of "Why Can't I Relax?" was the
oh,
name of,
really?
like, why I can't, relax on Sunday or something like that, with the
Yes,
inability of like feeling guilty. Why do I feel guilty when I relax, or something like that?
yes,
And there's a reason for that. And
yes.
it took work to get rid of that. It took a lot
Yeah,
of
I
work.
mean, to even uncover it, because you don't even acknowledge,
Mhm.
you're just churning, and you don't even understand that these imprints on how you act that are controlling how you act, but they're in our unconscious. And
Mhm.
um, you know, one of the most important things that I learned during those hard years, looking back, is like, if you don't find any time for yourself, or for God, or for close relationships, you're gonna have problems, I think.
This leads us perfectly into what did you do? How did you take ownership and come out of this difficulty, this challenge, all the pain that you were dealing with and you weren't quite sure what was going on, like you had said? How did you
Yeah.
come out of that?
Well, first I wallowed in it for several years. Seriously.
Thank you for
I
your
mean,
honesty. I'm sure there are people listening going, oh, I'm not alone. But
that's that.
there comes a time to stop doing that.
Yes, yes, that's the being stuck thing,
Yeah.
And I look back and when I in later years learned about the 12 steps when I was working in the city. And I think it was almost like a first step. I surrendered. I acknowledged that I could not fix this marriage. But the problem was I didn't really want to get a divorce. Should I get a divorce? Should I not get a divorce? And this just made me crazy for I I knew that wouldn't solve the problems. We would still be raising 3 children. I knew he was unhappy. I was unhappy. I don't know. I was pretty ingrained from my era, from my being raised in the faith about divorce, but still in all, I knew that the way we were living was really unhealthy for us, but especially for the children, because by this time they were like middle school and early high school. And we clearly had a dysfunctional home. We clearly had a dysfunctional home. It was very, very hard on the girls. A lot of language, a lot of, in retrospect, shaming and criticism and lack of trust. And that inability of my mother to talk with me, you would think I would learn from that, but I didn't. I did the same thing with my girls. I just wasn't very open, I guess. I think in retrospect.
Well, it sounds
Anyway,
like you weren't sure that you saw that. When you got married and you had your kids, you didn't recognize that your parents had not talked to you, or the things that were missing, you didn't recognize those things were missing. So you didn't do anything about them. Whereas when I got married, I'm like, I am not raising my kids like that. I don't know what I'm doing, but it's not that.
Yeah. No,
kind of thing.
I
And so
didn't.
that brings about a change. When you see that there's something, then you do something. But it sounds like you
did
just were
not.
going with what you knew.
No, you're right. I did not, because we had good parents who worked really hard for us. And they I think raised us a lot in the style of the times too, I guess. But anyway, when I couldn't endure my worry, especially about the girls, I finally just came back to God in the most heartfelt way that I could imagine, with my pain and my tears and my anger. Like, how could you let me be in this mess? And, you want me to stay married, but then the kids are going to be ruined and da, da, da. But
God has big shoulders. He can handle all that.
he can, yeah. I determined, based on some things that happened, that God wanted me to stay married. And that was my point of change, because I made then a fundamental decision that I was going to stay married. And my surrender really was to say to God, okay, I'm going to stay married. Can you please step up and take care of our family and the girls?
Help me.
Yeah.
Help
you know
me.
what I mean? Especially because if we're going to stay married, then this is going to be difficult unless there's change. So I really made a fundamental change in my life, because I knew that I needed God. And all those books you read when you needed help, that's what I was doing. Read a zillion of books, prayed so much. I started going out with some long early morning breakfasts with lady friends that I had met for some really intimate, holy, heartrending sharing things, which I hadn't had for years, and probably I don't know when ever.
Yeah.
And so as I was making those changes, and I told my husband that I was going to, he knew I had been to the lawyer and everything. And I told him I was going to drop all that and we were going to just make it work. And it really did ease the pressure in the home, just to have a fundamental decision made and have that taken off the table. It
takes
really
that dark cloud that's hanging over the top and moving at least that one thing.
Yes. And we ended up with a series of health issues, though. Two of my girls had issues around that time. There was a few year period where so much was happening. It was just amazing. And then around that time, he got sick. And so within a period of several years after this major turnaround, he got leukemia and died.
Wow.
So that it was like uh, just not what I had expected from that moment of surrender.
Yeah, if I turn this around, I'm going to do this. And wait, what? Like
Yeah,
that? Well, my
yeah.
girls are got this and my husband's got this and what's going on? And then he goes and dies. How long was he sick?
About 2.5 years. The last year was he ended up um, being evaluated for a bone marrow transplant and went through all that prep, and we were away from home for a number of weeks, he and I, and yeah. The thing of it was when he was sick, my role was very clear because I was a caregiver and I could take care of him. I took some time off work and made modifications so I could be available. And I have to say, he came home for the last 6 weeks of his life. It was summer. And so all three of our girls were home from school at that time. So we had these 6 weeks at home, and there was definite healing of our family during those times. It was a very, I get teary thinking about it but so after all that, then we had those 6 weeks and then he died. He died very peacefully.
Wow.
So
That's so great. You had that time of healing there,
it
even
it
with your
really
girls.
it really was. For for those who have cancer, if you have advanced malignancy or other diseases, I just advise you get hospice early. Don't wait till 3 days before you die. I mean, if you can get sufficient home care to support your family, and it just gives you a respite. It can be a beautiful time. I mean, beautiful if you know what I mean, but
Yes,
it's
hospice
a,
is
it's
a
a gift.
gift.
It is a gift, and it's not. Unfortunately, what I saw working, and I still see it sometime. Friends and associates, it's called upon too late, too often.
Mm. Well, some people do not realize that hospice is not just for people who are dying.
Yes.
Hospice is available for a different level of that. I learned this through my mother-in-law. She had Alzheimer's and we were taking care of her. She was in an assisted living place and she ended up being in hospice, and they kept extending it because she couldn't care for herself. They have certain parameters that if you
Yes.
meet these parameters,
Yes.
and it is such a beautiful support system.
Yes.
So I just want to pause here. If you're listening, if you know someone, you have someone who's going through serious health challenges, investigate hospice. Hospice does not always mean the person is dying. And this might be news to you
Yes.
because I learned that. Look into it. It's scary. I understand. The word hospice is scary to many because they equate it with death, but it's not.
Some
Equate
hospices
it with
may,
life.
some hospices, Daniel, may stick with that kind of a criteria of it being a terminal illness, but others may have different rules. I can't be 100% sure, but regardless, the idea of palliative care
Mhm.
when you have Alzheimer's or an end stage disease with no cure at all, and
Mhm.
if you're um, you have been to the hospital and had so many treatments and there is no cure, even if it's not um, cancer, palliative care can sometimes make such a difference.
Oh yeah. I My first encounter with hospice was with my mother. She had pancreatic cancer.
Mm,
And I don't even know how we came across hospice. I think it was one of the times she was in the hospital. 'Cause I'd never
mhm,
heard of it.
right.
And they were so helpful. And it was late when we signed up for it because I'd never heard of it. But after my mom passed, it was through hospice that I learned how to deal with grief.
Right.
the loss of many people, deaths in my growing
Right.
up. So I had a lot of trauma around death, and there was no one to help me.
Right.
So after my mom passed, I started dealing with the deaths that happened when I was a
Right.
child. Hospice is a beautiful thing. So they have many things to offer. So I'm really glad you brought that
You
up.
know, let me just mention for people who don't know, when you talk about palliative care, you're talking about a lot of kind of treatment and care and hands-on and nursing to make folks as comfortable as they possibly can be for as long as they're going to live. But it is not treatment that is necessarily going to extend their life.
Mhm.
It's not like aggressive treatment that will necessarily make them live longer. The goal is to make them live more comfortably, however
Yeah,
long.
it's like comfort care.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's
Yeah.
really cool. Well, after your husband died, then you made this major shift in your life. You had this wonderful time of healing, and you went through this change and learning yourself better. But then after he passed, you made a major shift. Tell us about that.
Well, I decided to change medical specialties so that I have more flexibility. And I was thinking there was a lot of reasons for the change. I loved radiation oncology, but it was not flexible specialty. And I didn't sometimes feel like a real doctor because it's very narrow. So when I was 51, I entered a medical training program, a 3-year residency to start over again. That was a trip, I got to say, a very humbling trip.
Well, it also makes the point, I should say, that it's not too late. I mean, you did that at 51.
I did that.
Some other person might say, oh, I can't do that. It's too late. You didn't say it's too late. You said, I'm doing this.
Yeah. Yeah. But you know what, Danielle, it's really interesting. When I look, in the process in the last 10 years of, seeing the psychotherapist and writing my memoir and everything, I look back at that change, at me doing that when I was 51. And it's right in line with this working and being productive. And I asked myself, wow, would you have been better off if you just relaxed and spent more time with your kids who were, young in college? Or how about your elderly mom who lived by this time widowed on the West Coast? That kind of a major, it you want to know, it didn't really enter my mind at the time.
Hmm. It didn't
So,
enter
I
your
mean,
mind to not go into something else? What didn't
no,
enter your mind? I got a little confused there.
it, it, the downside of doing that residency didn't enter my mind, that
Mm,
once again, I would be very, very busy and I
mm,
would not have flexibility to go here and there and, spend a couple months with my mother or travel with my children or something like that.
gotcha. Counting the
I,
cost.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just interesting how you can look back and think about it.
How soon after your husband passed did you make this change?
Uh, a year and 2 years, a year and a half to 2 years.
Oh, so it wasn't immediately. Sometimes people do things immediately and they don't
Yeah,
think about it because they're reactionary because of this
right,
big change. So
right. But
I'm just curious.
it was, it was eye-opening to see, medicine from a more broad perspective. And that's when I started to learn, especially when I started working and I moved to Washington, D.C. and working with, in a clinic in the city with a lot of immigrants and poor people, and working in a facility called Christ House, which was a medical recovery facility for homeless people. So
Mhm.
a lot of drug addiction and mental illness. And whoa, that was an eye-opening experience for me to see health from this broad perspective, and how it was so impacted by poverty and lack of opportunity, and especially stress and overwork and probably some injustice thrown in. It was really something.
Wow. Wow. Well, you started a ministry and you told me how you learned about ACEs. Did you learn about ACEs while you were in your residency or when you were working at the clinic?
When I was working at that clinic, I saw all the results of ACEs. And for in case somebody doesn't know, an ACE is adverse childhood experience. And I guess, Danielle, you've probably talked about it on your show a lot. But
I
anyway, so
have.
just in case somebody's not doesn't know, it's a way to quantitate the trauma or abuse or neglect that a child had, and then to show the impact of that on lifelong health and well-being, mental, physical, all kind decision making. So
Mhm.
when I was in the clinic, I just couldn't imagine how these people could have so many medical problems. Why would one person have 6 or 8 diagnoses, from heart disease to lupus to high blood pressure to arthritis, and then bad rash, and then they get their cancer. I mean, it was just, it was, I didn't really, at the time, I had not read the ACE studies when I was
Mhm.
working there. So I didn't know the explanation. But when I learned about ACEs and read like The Body Keeps Score,
Mhm. I talk
uh,
about that book too.
yeah, that's a tremendous book. It's like, oh my gosh, that's what I was seeing. And between everything I learned in my personal life about how messed up relationships create suffering,
Mhm.
and then what I saw in Washington with homelessness and the stresses of immigrants and poverty, I just came to understand this, way broader perspective of looking at health. You're not healthy just because you don't have a disease today. It's like so much more, um, to have, an unstressed life, or to understand, if you had ACEs, to be able to address them, to understand things like staying in the moments so that you can know yourself a little bit better and not do what I did and go years without kind of even knowing why I was doing what I was doing. I mean, the really the whole key to all of that is we all have to allow ourselves just a little bit of time for quiet time, for reflection, for prayer, for God. I think is that's the ultimate conclusion I finally reached through all of this, that those of us who have a faith, it just is an incredible foundation for a life of abundant health.
Yeah, the people that you were working with in the clinic, were they aware that they had ACEs? Were they aware of why they had all
No,
these things going on? Yeah, see,
no.
that's I want to pause here because this is part of what I do to make people, not make people, to invite people to look into their life to see why. Do you want to see why? Because if you look at why, then maybe you can get rid of it.
Mhm.
So I just want to pause here for people, just take note here. If you're struggling with, do you have a ton of different diagnoses, or do you go to the doctor and they can't find out what's wrong with you, but you have something going on? There may be a reason. It may be something related to ACEs. There's other acronyms also, but it's different ways of saying trauma, because people avoid the word trauma because they don't understand it and they
Right.
stigmatize it. But it's like, did you have a significant emotional event? Did you have an adverse childhood experience? Did you have a dysfunctional home? Did you have a challenging childhood? Whatever word you want to use. If you need help, please do something.
I agree. And there's more things they can ask if they're in that stuck position feeling crummy. The data about chronic illness in our country is just staggering.
Uh-huh.
And but the fact is that 3/4 of chronic illness can be either cured or made significantly better by lifestyle changes.
Mhm.
So, and I personally think, based on my own many years of experience, that we as a human people really underestimate the power we have over our health.
Mhm.
um, but if you're in some stuck position, like I was, like you were, like probably all of us have been at some time or another, where everything just, you don't feel well, you're hurting, you're anxious. A lot of people are anxious now. They're very challenging times. So if it's just not good the way it is, then um, you have to make a change, to see a change. And it could just be a little change though, but for positive, there has to be some commitment of time to the effort. If you get up 15 minutes earlier a day for journal or reflection or prayer or meditation, I mean, I think that's a, a really excellent way to start.
Mhm.
Um,
And what this is people need to dare to believe they're worth that time,
mhm.
because trauma emasculates our sense of value and our sense of self. So we don't want to take that time because, we don't matter enough, or we don't think it's worth it, or who cares. And it's very hopeless filled, instead of daring to believe that you're worth it, daring to believe this will make a change, that, people matter. That's why I do what I do, to just try and fill people with their value. We have enormous value. Like you were talking about, people don't understand the power they have over their health. And what I'm seeing more and more and getting more and more convinced of is people don't do this because they don't see the tremendous creation the human person is.
Oh gosh.
Just, I mean, we think about the body. I'm reading Dr. Caroline Leaf's book, Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess. I'm reading about thoughts and about what thoughts are and how many thoughts we have and where they're located in the brain and in the mind and in the body, and how many cells we have. And I'm reading this, and just the enormity of the complexity of the human creation is mind-boggling.
Oh,
But trauma has emasculated people so much that they don't consider that. I was reading, there's a Bible verse in Psalm 139, which people know it in the King James, they've heard that, and some people love that. I tripped over that for the longest time. I was reading it in the Passion Translation today, which was helping me more with validating what I've been seeing and learning. The King James says that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. Well, that didn't help me. I was all full of fear, so to be fearfully anything did not help me. And wonderfully, that just meant, it was a big deal or something. But in the Passion Translation, the New Living Translation, other translations, it talks about the amazingness, the complexity, the mysteriousness. And if you think about science, some people, they think religion and science, or Christianity and science, shouldn't mix, but science is a validation of what God created. God created science, and it's amazing. And for us to see how much we matter, how complex we are in our mind and our wills, our emotions, our bodies, we are a hard thing to operate.
you're speaking my language, lady. I love it. I mean, absolutely. The body is incredible, and that's why it in my ministry, it's been so easy for me to join my medical knowledge with my faith, which has continued to deepen through the years. It now guides everything I do, and I can see how to have a health journey that's interrelated with your faith journey is very, very easy, because there are so many links. And the one of the biggest, it's not the biggest, but one thing that I talk about a lot is how prayer, certain types of prayer, has unexpected collateral health benefits. Now, that sounds maybe kind of wonky, but
Oh, unpack
with
that. I'm fascinated. What do you mean by that?
without a doubt, I am convinced. Well, so first example is there's so much written about meditation, and there's so much science about meditation, and a lot of that is on it's not Christian meditation, it's other forms of meditation or secular meditation, but it's been around forever, and people have done it forever because they liked the results. And in the Christian tradition, the meditation contemplative prayer has been also part of our tradition forever, but not so much in the general public, more in monasteries. But last century, Thomas Merton wrote about it, and then Thomas Keating and others tried to describe a form of meditation that would be understandable to Christians, based on that rich tradition. And they called it centering prayer. So part of my change through these years was to start learning about and then practicing centering prayer. And it's a quiet prayer without words, without thoughts. And it's a prayer of intention where I give a certain amount of time with the intention. I say yes, yes to the presence and action of our Lord during this prayer time. And then I'm just waiting in his presence. If thoughts come through, I just ignore them. They just go through because they always do. Just try not to hang on to the distractions. And it's advised to use a prayer word or phrase as an anchor. So I may say Jesus when I breathe. So this was one of the prayer practices that I started. And I'll describe the other before I tell you the health results. The other I called God-centered mindfulness, or praying in the moment. And I didn't make this up, but I made up my version that works for me. So you may have heard of the Jesus prayer. It's Lord Jesus, have mercy on me, for I'm a sinner, or something very common in the Eastern churches. And there's other examples of Bible talks about praying without ceasing during the day, which was always kind of mysterious. So I studied mindfulness as part of when I was setting up the Serenity and Health Ministry. I was really, really impressed with mindfulness, and that seemed like something that most of us needed more of. I know I needed more of it because I was up in my head all the time. That was my problem. So mindfulness means you're aware of the moment. I'm fully with you at this minute. I'm not planning my answer to the next question, you know? So I decided I would try and say a prayer often during the day. And my plan was to say, my Lord and my God, anytime I thought about God during the day, or anytime I needed God. And so my goal was to say it a lot. So like if I saw a pretty sunset, or I thought it would be helpful if I would say that, like when I started to get stressed or irritable, or have some, especially if I was going up in my head with the whole stream of worry or judgment or something. And in the beginning, I would forget to say it. But the thing is, Danielle, by 6 or 8 weeks, that prayer popped into my head spontaneously many, many times a day, like when I would start to go into my head. So it would interrupt the process. So like I would see somebody over there doing something weird and start to have a thought, and then all of a sudden pops into my head, my Lord and my God. And then I take a breath, the thought goes away, and I carry on with my life. So each time that happened, it was a prayer. It brought me back to the moment. It brought me back to a better place than I was headed, right? So those two prayers combined, I am convinced without a doubt, over the years, have helped me to be less reactive, less to stressors, more able to stay a little bit better in the moment, a little bit better of a listener. And when they did research on meditation and mindfulness, these changes translate into a healthier body, you know, with blood pressure and heart rate and cortisol and catecholamines and all those things. So of course, I didn't start those prayers for the health benefit, but God is so good. I really think that it's like a gift. I don't know. I just think it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, there's scriptures that talk about the health in the body. Like, I think it's depression rots the bones.
Yeah, there's
And
some great ones.
there's things and they're really scientifically health. When I
Right,
read them before, I thought of them as figurative,
right.
but they really,
No,
the,
you're right. There's a
the
lot of
words do
mind body.
impact our bodies.
Yes,
Yeah. And our emotions. Yeah.
yes. There's a lot of mind body medicine in the Bible.
Yeah.
And I think the faith health link, the other big step in there is to that I believe as Christians we have a responsibility to be stewards of our bodies, to be stewards of this incredible gift of health we have. And that comes with, I think God wants us to take as good of care as we can. And uh, that gets down to the things like smoking and eating and exercising and things, some of the harder habits that we have to work on. But he doesn't require perfection, but I think he wants us to work. I think we have a responsibility to work at these things.
Yeah. Work at these things. And oftentimes, I believe the things that you mentioned, there's a reason that people have those. So if you deal with the reason, oftentimes it's trauma of some sort. You deal with that trauma, and then you can more easily, not always easy, because I'm not going to say it's magical or something, but if you deal with the root cause of why we have these bad coping mechanisms, then we don't need that bad coping mechanism anymore, and we can build a different one, because it's like, wow, I don't have to do that, I can do this instead, because you've like pulled the root out.
Exactly.
So there's a reason why we do things to ourselves.
Right.
And
Right.
sometimes we don't know why, but that's where we need to be
Exactly.
willing to dare to take a step to see that we matter enough to do something, to just start somewhere, little by little, just start somewhere, do something.
Right. Right. Well, the insights I have about myself did not come automatically. This took a lot of years. Um, I finally saw a therapist to try and, because as I started writing my book, and I just realized I didn't understand why I did. I just didn't understand things. Um, it just took a long time for me to see these ingrained patterns, but now I see them much more easily, like this work thing. I'm thinking like, even with writing the book, should I write another book? Should I do these podcasts? I think, well, Donna, are you going to work uh, till you die or what? How are you going to decide how long to work? And I've been thinking about it. Like, it's interesting.
Well, working was part of life in the garden before the fall. So work is a part of how we're made, but there's how much we work and what we do with work. And is the work really, is it toil filled, or is it just something that it becomes a part of our life? I mean,
Yeah.
I love doing my interviews, giving them and being interviewed. To me, this is just fun. So
Yeah.
to me, I don't consider this as work, but there are things I must do to accomplish this. So,
Right.
but I have done work before where it was all toil. So there's a
Yes.
little bit of a difference there, and just find the balance there of, what can you do and what do you want to keep doing?
Right.
Is it work to you, or is it giving you pleasure and purpose? Is it
Well,
taking away
see,
from something else?
that's the point. It does give pleasure and purpose, and as did my career, but it does take away from other things. That's where the
And that's where you
balance,
have to measure,
that's the
where do you
tricky
want the
part.
things to go?
That's
What
where
do you
the
want? So,
balancing comes in. Exactly.
right. Right. Well, you mentioned you have your book. You have your book with you. Hold up
I
your book
do.
and tell us the title and tell us about your book.
Oh, I'd love to. So the title is Pilgrimage: A Doctor's Healing Journey by Donna Chacko, MD. I got two actual gold medals from two different book awards, which was lovely. And
Congratulations.
thank you. The book's available on Amazon and at Barnes and Noble. And anybody wanted a signed copy, they could contact me on my website, which is serenityandhealth.com. Serenity and Health, 3 words. And information is also there about my blog and signing up for that and various other features that are
So is your
explain.
book like an elaboration of what we've been talking about today, your journey
Yes.
from that whole thing? Awesome.
Yes, for sure. And it starts with my life and my trials and what I learned, and then how that joins with the medical experience and what I learned. And I kind of put that together in this ministry that I now have, which is Serenity and Health. And I do occasional programs at churches, and I write my blog, and they're all on topics related to health of body, mind, and spirit, and how we can all have more of it.
Awesome. That's wonderful. Well, how else can people connect with you? Your website, serenityandhealth.com. Are you on any of the socials or?
I'm on Facebook and Twitter. So Facebook, it's Serenity and Health, and Twitter, it's Donna Chacko, DC, I think.
Okay. Well, do you have anything that you want to give our listeners before we tie this up?
No, just only that find some time for yourself and for God. There's always something that you can do less of, some screen time that you can do less of, to make that a priority. I think if that's the number one advice I would have, I wish I had done that decades earlier. So,
Okay. Well, thank you for being with us today, Donna.
well, thank you for having me. You do great work, and it's really a pleasure to be part of it.
Oh, thank you. Talk to you in a minute. Well, that was just wonderful hearing about Donna. What a journey she went on. How that gentleman mentioned being a doctor and then she became a doctor. She hadn't thought about that, and how just sharing with us how her childhood played out in her adult life. And she didn't realize that until she started doing a deep dive. Until she started taking some time for herself to look into herself and into her life. And that was her advice for you, to look into yourself and find out if things are not going awesomely fantastic. Take some time to look, some mindfulness, look into it and get some help. She said she got help. She got counseling. If you need counseling, get counseling. If you want coaching, I do coaching. Pick up a copy of Donna's book or however else that you can help yourself, because you matter. You matter. I'm that lady on the internet who loves you, and I tell you that all the time. And so I challenge you, do something for yourself because you matter. Until next time, I love you.